Hello, everyone. This is Brian Kozlowski coming to you live from the FCG studios, otherwise known as my home office for today. And I'm very pleased to be joined by my colleague, Greg Burns. Greg, hello.
Hello, everyone.
And we are here for the next 20 minutes to enlighten you on strategic planning. And for all of our friends in the Northern Hemisphere, the summer months are upon us. There's no better time to hit the beach, hit the pool, of course, starts thinking about strategic planning. Probably not where you thought I was going to go with that sentence, but in reality, it really is a great time. We're at the halfway mark, plus or minus, of the year. Give us a good opportunity to think about, if you have a strategic plan, how are we doing against it? And if you don't, well, it's a great time to stop, think about where you want to go as we, believe it or not, start to approach 2024. So the next 20 minutes, Greg and I will share some stories, we'll share some data, we'll share some ideas and frameworks to help you think about strategic planning, again, whether you have one or don't have one, as we approach the new year. So we do a strategic planning and we ask folks about their experience with strategic planning. We typically get about 3 answers. The first of which is, sure, we've got one, and it looks something like this cartoon. It's 100 pages, pretty unactionable, a lot of data, a lot of text, and it really had become an exercise in creative writing. It's not a strategic plan. It's just a bunch of pages with words on it. Not actionable. No one knows what to do. Doesn't provide the strategic vision of where you want to take your firm, or quite frankly, where individuals want to take their career. And that's the combination for a strategic plan. So this is something we see. It's something we advise against, but it is, for a lot of people, their experience in strategic planning. The second one, and the one we most often see, is this. Oh, sure, we did a strategic plan 5 years ago. So the next question Greg and I will ask is, sure, can we see it? Absolutely. They go on a shelf, they pull it down, and I hand over heart, I've seen this twice. They dust it off. It has been up there so long, and they show it to me. So the next questions are, great, what have you done with this? And I get I haven't looked at that in 5 years. It's not a strategic plan. It's an exercise in writing. It is not an actionable. A strategic plan should be something that's a living document. It's something that's part of your organization day in and day out. It shouldn't be something that's sitting up on a shelf collecting dust, or as a paperweight in a lot of cases what it is. So second answer we typically see is something that looks like this. The third is the foggy view. It's, yeah, we've got something. As my partner Keith Robinson likes to say, it's the road apples approach, which is, yeah, we're going to figure it out as we're going along. And why I love this image is because it really depicts how some firms operate, which is, we're going to handle everything right in front of us. And what's far in and what's in the distance, yeah, we'll kind of figure that out as we go along. Now, in good times, that strategy does work and can work. But in times that are a little more trying, both from an investment perspective, from an environment perspective, not having that clarity is disconcerting for sometimes your investors, a lot of times for your team members, and for leadership. So what we're going to do today is thinking through these 3 experiences. We're hopefully going to provide you some clarity. So Greg in a second is going to walk us through data on why plans fail. And just so you know, 70% of them do, for a lot of the reasons we just went through. We're going to introduce you, or reintroduce you, to an old tool that many of you know. That's a great way to get started in the strategic planning process. And then we're going to share a couple of frameworks with you to think about how to make a strategic plan actionable, to avoid it being 136 pages, to avoid it sitting up on a shelf, and to give you more of that clarity so you have a clear, actionable vision for your future. So Greg, I know both of us have had experiences with some of these things. Can you just walk us through some of the reasons why strategic plans fail?
Sure. Thanks, Brian, and good to see everybody. So as you can see on the slide, and as Brian mentioned, all right, data and history tells us that 70% of strategic plans fail. And on this slide, you can also see the drivers, or many of the drivers, on why those plans might fail. And to be honest, what I've seen in my experiences and even with clients is any one of these, and clearly several of these going on, is almost guaranteed that it's going to doom your strategic plan. So I won't discuss all of these, but I want to talk at least about a couple of them that I've seen, unfortunately, and probably failed at myself throughout my career. So the first one I really want to talk about is lack of buy-in. So too often I've seen and have done where a couple people sit in a corner office or on a Zoom and create a strategic plan, spend hours creating it, usually pretty well thought of. And then the light of day comes, and lo and behold, it's rolled out to the organization, and we're amazed and befuddled on why it's just not accepted and completely implemented as we dream that it might be. Clearly, the answer there and the problem there is lack of buy-in. Success in a strategic plan has to have buy-in up, down, and across the organization. And as we're building that strategic plan, bringing in a diversity of thought across the organization is really going to help drive success of a strategic plan and get buy-in right on the front end. The second one I want to talk about is one that unfortunately has been my pet peeve, but also one of my failures too often in my career. And it's really around progress tracking. All right. Again, even when I've been in situations where we've done a nice job putting the strategic plan together, where we've tried to look at some of these drivers of failures and take them into account and build what we believed was a strong, robust strategic plan. Unfortunately, in too many examples, we forget to put, and I forgot to put in the progress tracking. And what happens once you do the progress tracking and you don't do that, then it's, to Brian's point, it's going to end up on a shelf or in a file on somebody's computer somewhere, because what measured gets done. And what I've seen, unfortunately, is that with the lack of progress tracking, what really occurs is that we check the box, we do a strategic plan, we're done, and the organization I worked in, we're moving on to the next shiny penny and forget the progress tracking. And that really is going to, it's going to end up on a shelf or in a file, as Brian mentioned. So how do we ensure that we have better success than the norm of 30%? And how do we do some things in advance and talk about a process that is really going to allow a successful strategic plan? So I like to say, back to the basics. All right, pull out your old business school stuff, a good old SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And just a reminder, a SWOT really is a framework to evaluate a company's competitors and to assist in the development of a strategic plan. 2, it helps a firm assess internal and external factors, as well as current and future potential. And 3rd, it allows us to get a lot of input from the organization and start to create that buy-in already early on in the process. So the SWOT is a great first step in the process to avoid the pitfalls from the wheel that we just talked about, set you up well for the process that Brian is going to speak to in a moment, and really assist you in developing a sustainable, which is the key word, sustainable strategic plan moving forward. So Brian?
Thanks, Greg. And as we think about our process and think about our framework, one of the 2 things we start with when we work with clients on the strategic planning process is we tend to be more inclusive. So we prefer to have more voices in the room, people who are going to be major decision makers in the process. Now, there's a balance between having the right number and having the right voices, that's obviously the art and the science. But the greater the voices, the better for providing for all those reasons that Greg highlighted for why plans fail. And we start with the SWOT. And we ask folks to really reflect on where they are as an organization, because we use all of that data, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, and feed that into a framework that we call GHOST. And GHOST stands for goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics. And that, in essence, becomes the framework that firms follow for the next. We look at it, we used to do 5-year strategic plans. Now, in the reality, the business is changing so fast that we now tend to focus more on the 3 years. And that gives people enough energy to be excited about the shorter time frame to get things done. It gets them, it helps them to be more realistic about, every 3-year block, we have to think about where we are as an organization. And quite frankly, because we had one client say this, the problem is if you go 5 years, when you get to that 3.5-year period, folks have a tendency to say, you know what, we'll put that off to the next plan. And you wind up having a 1.5-year block where not much gets done. So a 3-year plan, looking at the ghost. And what is ghost? So if you're thinking about a picture, think about ghost as a plane. And you're going to go from 30,000 feet all the way down to the runway. And the 30,000-foot view is your goals. So from a high level perspective, what are you trying to achieve? And, typically we see anywhere between 3 or 4 goals per organization. I'm going to provide a pretty simple example of a ghost today. So a goal, you think about the beginning of the year, and a lot of us think about our health and being a healthier version of ourselves. So a goal as an individual might be, all right, be the healthiest version of myself. It's very broad. We often find with goals is they can be evergreen. And what I mean by that is they can carry over from one strategic plan to the next because they are really foundational elements for who you are as an organization, or in this case, as an individual. And they really provide great direction. But that's very high level. It doesn't give you, it helps to point you in a direction, but not much of a direction. So we go down a tick from there. And in supporting those goals are a set of objectives. Again, you'll see the number 3 to 5, 3 to 6. Now we become more specific and more quantifiable. We don't attach any names. So in this, using the same example. So again, my goal is be the healthiest version of myself. One objective might be to lose 10 pounds. Okay. Now a little bit more exact. I know what I want to do and how I want that to look. But still, when you think about strategic planning and wanting it to be actionable and wanting it to be clear, I need a little bit more detail. So now we've gone from 30,000 feet, maybe to about 15,000 feet. If you're thinking of the plane, we're going to get down to about 5,000 feet. We're going to get to the strategies. So the strategies provide high level description, but they're going to be even more detailed. So in the same, again, the goal, be the healthiest version of myself. I want to lose 10 pounds. How am I going to lose those 10 pounds? That's what the strategies are going to help me to define. One might be, I want to exercise more frequently. Okay, good. Another one might be, I just want to eat healthy. Great. It's providing greater clarity on how I'm going to achieve my goal, which is being the healthiest version of myself. And then the tactics, you're now on the runway. And as a detailed person, I love tactics because when a strategic plan is built and you're living into it, the tactics are where you are. It's the day-to-day operations of how you're going to execute on the plan. So continuing with the same example, one tactic might be to satisfy my strategy of exercise more frequently. It might be I want to buy an elliptical machine by August 31st of 2023. So I've gone from being very general to just be a healthier version of myself to being very specific of I'm going to do that by buying an elliptical machine by the end of August. So I know, and I can trace back, all right, where we want to go, how we're going to get there, both very specific and a little broad. But then I have very actionable items. For eating healthy might be to one tactic, and again, it's going to vary based upon your strategies, might be to investigate weekly meal services by September 1st. I'm being very specific about the dates because when you get down to the tactics, that is where the accountability comes in. It comes in two areas. And if you think back to the reasons why plans fail, first, I'm being very specific, well, 3 things. First, I'm being very specific about what I'm doing. The second, I'm being very specific about when I'm doing it. And then the third piece and a supporting framework to this, many of you may know RACI, we call RACI, which is responsible party, executing party, consulted party, and informed party. For each of these tactics, we put a name on it. It is a person who is responsible for ensuring that it is completed. It is addressing one of the key failures of accountability. By putting a name on it, it's helping to ensure it gets done. So we put a date on it and we put a name on it. And it becomes a very detailed to-do list in a lot of ways, but we have very clear direction about where we want to take the strategy. So we go from 30,000 feet down to the runway. We go very broad, high-level thinking. We go very specific. very down to the details. And why this framework is great, and we've seen this time and again with clients, is as you know, we're very big into the Enneagram. People think differently. So think through your organization. There are going to be some in your organization who are going to excel at thinking big picture, so goals and objectives. And there are going to be some that are going to excel in thinking more detailed, the strategies and tactics. And by bringing them together, you help to have a more effective and efficient plan. One other framework when thinking about creating a strategic plan, and now this is at the organizational level, is considering your stakeholders. So whether you're a long-only manager, a wealth manager, a hedge fund, a private equity firm, or any other firm in the world, quite frankly, you have 3 to 4, and I'll say why the 4th, key stakeholders in your organization. You have your clients, you have your employees, you have your owners, and you have your society. And I'll put the society off to the side for a second. But your clients, employees, and owners, as you'll see in these examples, all have different interests. So what's interesting to clients, strong performance, quality client service, is going to be different than what's important to your employees, which might be a strong reward system, a strong professional development plan. Whether you're a private firm or a public firm, if you have owners are interested in wealth creation, strong firm reputation. And society, which the last 18 months to 2 years has become an extremely important part of a strategic plan, whether it's a standalone element or woven into each of those 3, has to be a part of it. Thinking through community service, DE&I, if you're thinking of investing, sustainable investing. The important part of considering your stakeholders is they need to be represented in your strategic plan. Typically, what we'll see is there will be a goal designed for each of the clients, employees, and owners. A set of steps, a set of actions that speak effectively to that important stakeholder. And what your goal should be, if the plan is effective, is you have clients that are smiling because you have addressed their needs and their wants. You have employees who are smiling because the plan addressed their needs and wants. And you have owners smiling because you have addressed their needs as well. Now, in totality, you might be saying, this is a lot of information. How are you avoiding the 136 page issue you showed me earlier? The framework is very elegant in its simplicity. And it's designed to be completed in anywhere between, call it 6 to 8 pages. But drawing on these frameworks and being very clear about accountability and dates is a key element of it. So I'll leave you today with one key takeaway in thinking through what makes an effective strategic plan. We call it the 3 Ps. First, it starts with developing the plan. Following a framework that's clear, that's actionable, that gets more voices involved, that has the accountability built into it. The second part of the people, and that's split into 2 pieces. We looked at resourcing as one of the failures, acknowledging who you are as an organization and what's realistic. What can we get done realistically within a plan in the time frame that we want to be able to do it? So that's one side of the people. The other side of the people is getting folks involved. An effective strategic plan from the development and both the action should be a plan of the firm. So using tools like the ability to have folks involved, putting them on the responsibility matrix, all very important for getting voices in the room. And the last piece, purposeful decisions. Having a clear decision rights matrix for who is making the decisions. And that is where we'll leave you for today. So to hear this recording, please visit our website at focuscgroup.com. Our next Sit and Quit It, we will be back with you in September 22nd, 2013, where we have our Coaches Corner. And there we will have our coaches, the FCG coaches, join us and talk about the benefits of coaching. And we may, just may, even have some of the coachees that we work with share their thoughts and views on how coaching has been important to them. To join our distribution list, please reach out to our colleague, Laura Erkley, to get free white papers, webinar alerts, and all that good stuff. Greg, thank you for joining today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Everybody have a great weekend.
We wish you a fantastic weekend, and thanks again. See you all soon.